Welcome to Operation Retirement Readiness, where Amy and Mike, two certified financial planners, talk about how military members can prepare for transition and how veterans can prepare for ultimate retirement. This podcast represents the views of the hosts and any guest. It is for informational purposes only and should not be considered tax, financial, or legal advice. All information is regarded to be from reliable sources. The hosts are not responsible for any losses, damages, or liabilities that may arise from the use of this podcast. This podcast is not intended to replace professional advice.
Hi, Amy.
Hey, Mike, how's it going?
Good. How are you? How are things now that we're a little ways into the new year? Are you busy?
Yeah, it's busy as expected, which is always a good thing. People wanting to get started with their New Year's resolutions and preparing for plans for 2024 and beyond. How about you?
Yeah, it's been a good first couple weeks of the new year. A lot of people wanting to talk about money, which is always a good thing.
Yeah. Well, we've been talking about money-related New Year's resolutions over the last couple shows, and we've talked about some common and uncommon resolutions that people should think about, or maybe they do think about as they approach military retirement or ultimate retirement. And today we're going to jump into savings, the New Year's resolution of saving more, because that's the number 2 resolution after getting healthier. So Mike, when you think about savings, what are you thinking about?
So I'm gonna date myself, but my kind of early memory of savings is the passbook that banks used to give out that you'd have as a kid, and our school had a program where you'd bring in like a quarter or a dollar each week and with your passbook, and they'd send it off to the bank, and the bank would deposit it, and stamp the passbook with the new number and any interest. And so this was back in the late 70s, early 80s. So you were actually receiving interest. And so, that's when somebody says savings, my mind goes back to that.
That's pretty cool. I went to a much smaller school, so we didn't have any program like that. It was a very small school in the country. And so when I think about savings, the two things that come to mind, obviously, I think every kid had a piggy bank. So I saved all my quarters and pennies and nickels in my piggy bank. But um, at Christmas and on my birthday, my grandparents always gave me a savings bond. So those are the two things that I think about when I think about saving money.
Very nice. Yeah. Yeah. Those are great ways to save. Um, so before we go any further, a lot of people say savings. I think they sometimes mean investing and vice versa. So when you think about saving, what can you define that?
Yeah, actually, so there is really kind of almost, I'll say, an official definition, not so much of savings, but of investing. And so, when you go into a bank, you see signs around um, any bank that also has some sort of investment representative in there, or you see it on TV as different organizations are advertising if they're advertising investments. And you've heard, the um, these are not guaranteed by the federal government or the U.S. government. They are not guaranteed by the bank, and they may lose value. So the not may disclosure that happens with investments, because all of those things are true about investments. Investments mean that you're putting money into something, a vehicle. Um, it is not guaranteed in any way. So you may not get all of your principal back, never mind any earnings. And it definitely can lose value. We've seen that over the years. Versus savings, where savings are typically in a bank product. And when you think about banks, you also think about FDIC insurance, which is basically the way that the government provides reassurance to depositors, not investors, but depositors, that their principal is going to be there when they ask for it back. And for a lot of years, we didn't have a lot of interest, but you could be sure that you were going to get your principal back. These days, the interest rate situation is a little bit different. So you're going to get your principal back as well as your interest from some sort of savings vehicle. And that's just one example of a savings vehicle. One example of savings. So does that sort of cover it, Mike?
Yeah, I think that hits it well. And the one thing I like to think about is kind of time frame also, is how long and when you'd want to, shift from savings to investing. And I typically think that's, investing is stuff money you need maybe 3 to 5 years or more later in time. If you're putting something into something that could lose value and you need it in 3 weeks, you're really making a coin flip of whether that investment's going to go up or down. You never know. So timing is essential when you're looking at savings, investment, and where to put your money. So that's really important. And then the other piece, you mentioned the interest rates, and while you're going to get the amount of money you put in, if we're in a higher inflation environment and you're getting paid less than the interest rate or inflation rate, you're gonna in a realized sense get back less than you actually put in. So we see that today, inflation running 3, 4, or 5%, whatever it is right now. But some of these banks are still paying well under 1%, maybe even under like 0.25% interest for checking and savings accounts. So yeah, you'll get your money back, but it may be worth less than when you actually put it in. So making sure you understand the rates and inflation and how that all works is important.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So with that, I mean, when we talk about savings, you made reference to shorter timelines. As we think about retirement, whether it's a military retirement or an ultimate retirement, in either case, you're talking about decades in retirement. How do you balance savings and investing, or how do you think about what should be in savings versus what should be invested in terms of retirement?
Yeah, for those long-term goals, if you're still in the military and it's ultimate retirement, yeah, you want to be invested. But if we're talking about the transition, liquidity and having access to money is key. When I was approaching military retirement, we had sold a rental property, made a little bit of money off that, and I knew I was just going to keep that in liquid savings because I was going to have expenses, moving cross country, buying a house, needing money for a deposit, and then when we got here, we decided that we were going to finish the basement in the house and put my office down there. And so there was, I knew I had some needs in the short time. And so that's key. What I tell folks as they're approaching military retirement, it may seem like blasphemy, but if you need to raise more money and maybe stop contributing to TSP for a little while so that you have money that can bridge that transition, if it takes you a little bit longer to find your next job or you decide to start a business, having that money is key to just being able to survive. So that's one way I like to think about it. I don't know if you have any examples from your transition. It definitely was. I was glad I had that money. It made me not have to borrow anything or run up the credit cards or things like that. But it can be a challenge because there some of it's unknown, and so having that flexibility is really what I like to build in.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head with the uncertainty piece of it. I mean, there's so much uncertainty as you're making any transition, and the military transition, I feel like might accentuate a lot of that because you're coming from, most people have spent their entire adult lives in the military, have not been overly exposed to the civilian sector of things, whether it's, moving into a federal government job or a private sector job. In either case, it's all very new stuff. So the last thing you need to be worried about is whether or not you have the cash that you need to get through the transition, because there's no guarantee you're going to come out and make a paycheck right away. And there is a little bit of a lag. I mean, they've done a pretty good job getting the lag between your last active duty paycheck or a reserve paycheck and your first military retirement paycheck. The lag isn't quite there like it used to be, but it's still a few weeks difference. And if you're not going to be working, it's huge to have money on hand, just for peace of mind. It takes some of the stress off and gives you more options than you might have. You might not be so willing to accept a job that you weren't interested in, or something less than you wanted to take because you're afraid they may not accept a higher offer. And in terms of heading into ultimate retirement, it's that much more important to have a savings cushion as you prepare for final retirement, because ideally you don't go back to work unless you really want to, pick up a part-time job or something like that. But you don't want to be in a situation where you retire and then the next year the market tanks. That's, basically, if your investments decrease in the first 2 years after retirement, that's one of the biggest stressors on a retirement plan. Potentially even bigger than things like maybe Social Security not paying out all of, the benefits you expected. So having the cash cushion to get through market downturns in the very beginning of your retirement is a really big deal.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people talk about, when you're working, having that 3 to 6 months, somewhere in there of savings. But like you said, ultimate retirement, if you're not getting that paycheck, it can be, I like to advise, at least 2 years, maybe, even 3 or 4, depending on risk tolerances and things like that, to just make sure you don't need to withdraw money from, investments that have gone down, because, we don't know what's happening with the stock market and even the bond market recently. People that, thought was safe, they can go down, and it like you said, it can jeopardize your plan significantly if you have to take out money when things are down. Most of the time, in all previous times, we've had recoveries uh, of stock and bond markets, but it's not guaranteed, and it's not guaranteed on any kind of time frame that we may be trying to get to. So having that, really kind of oversized, if you will, cash cushion is really huge in retirement. So, yeah, that's something I definitely advise folks as they're getting, between 3 years out from ultimate retirement. We start building up cash just slowly, and diverting more from maybe, more investments from their paychecks as they're getting ready to wrap up. But yeah, that's critically important.
And we've talked a lot about cash. You might read in the news about cash equivalents. Those are things like money markets, where they're not savings accounts, so they're not guaranteed, but they're like savings accounts in that they're relatively safe. They're based on very short term government treasury bills, which are widely considered to be risk free. But it all comes down to risk tolerance and making sure you understand what you have. So if you run across something that's a cash equivalent and you're not familiar with it, before you decide that it is a cash equivalent for you, you should do your homework or reach out to a financial planner who can give you good advice and tell you exactly what that is and whether or not it fits into your savings plan, not your investing plan, but your savings plan. And if it does, how it might fit in.
Yeah, that's a good point. So what, any other places besides bank accounts or, like you said, the money market funds that people could put money that they might need in the next 3 to 5 years, that does provide some interest?
Yeah. So one of the very common things that's gotten more popular over the years, I bonds are considered longer term investments. They're debt backed by the U.S. government, but they're meant to be longer term investments. But the government also issues short term debt, and those are called treasury bills. They have gotten to be quite a lot more popular. Some people buy them through their broker, through a brokerage account, wherever you happen to have your brokerage account set up. But you could also buy them through Treasury Direct. Again, how you incorporate a treasury bill strategy really depends upon your understanding and making sure you know exactly what it means to own a treasury bill, how they work, when they mature, and still, because they're not 100% liquid. If you're going to buy a 4-week T-bill, it's meant to be locked up for 4 weeks. So you certainly wouldn't put grocery money into a 4-week T-bill unless it was for groceries in 4 weeks. But again, it's all about understanding how these cash equivalents work and how they might fit into your overall saving strategy, based on your specific situation. So you can't work on just generalizations in this podcast or in any other financial publication.
Yeah, and I guess the other one I'll throw out is CDs or certificates of deposit that you can get, at a bank. They typically offer a little bit higher interest rates, but again, like the T bills and locking your money up, you are typically giving the bank the money for 6 months, a year, 2 years, something like that. So it's a fixed interest rate when you buy it. They take the money, they will credit you the interest, and then at the end of that time period, you get it back. Typically, you can get them back earlier, but you probably lose some of the money that some of the interest that you would have gotten if you have to take the money out early. But that's another place too, that's safe, that's FDIC insured, that you can put your savings in if you've got a little bit longer time horizon.
Yeah. Yeah, and something we didn't talk about specifically is, the difference between keeping your savings in any kind of retirement account versus just a plain old regular, what we would call a taxable account. So, your savings accounts are always considered taxable, but you can also have other kinds of accounts. And then most people have retirement accounts. It is okay to keep some of your cash in retirement accounts, but just understand the rules that are associated with pulling cash out of those accounts. So if you're less than age 59 and a half, the retirement account is not the best place to keep your cash. But if you're over age 59 and a half, it might be a great place to keep your cash.
Yeah, definitely. Some of the tax advantages there can make that a smart move.
So Mike, what do you think? I mean, we've talked about a lot of different things here. What do you think the key takeaways are, when somebody's thinking about saving specifically for a military or an ultimate retirement?
So I think there's a couple key things with savings, and the first is that savings should be safe and accessible. Based on the timeline that you are, needing the money. The second thing is it should be, shorter term things. If you need the money within 3 to 5 years, that's where you use a savings vehicle versus an investment that can go up or down with based on value. And during transitions, I'd say the third thing is that more savings and liquidity is better. Just gives you options, helps you reduce your stress if you just have that bigger cushion for that transition.
And the other thing, and we haven't used this word yet because we've been focused on the cushion for transition, but the reality is that your emergency fund that already exists, that should already exist, should that all of the preparation for retirement is sort of stacked on top of that. So you've got your emergency fund, and then you stack additional money on top of in order to make your transition a lot less stressful, and without having to restart your emergency fund for potentially zero once you are settled and through your transition.
No, that's a great point.
So Mike, is there anything else we should cover on savings before we head out for today?
No, I think we've hit the major things, and just helping folks to understand that transition that they may be approaching, and how savings can play a big part in that.
Awesome. Well, Mike, this has been great. I'm looking forward to our next several shows where we're going to continue talking about each of the common resolutions that people have with budgets and paying down debt and investing more and education savings. We'll be covering all of those in the coming shows, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, those are some great topics. So yeah, looking forward to getting back together and chatting about this in another couple weeks.
Awesome. Sounds good, Mike. Take care.
To get transcripts, show notes, or more information, go to operationretirementreadiness.com. Have a question or topic for the podcast? Send it to info@operationretirementreadiness.com. Find out more about Amy and Mike at their websites. Mike is the founder of Next Mission Financial Planning, LLC. He retired from the U.S. Air Force and has worked in the financial services sector since 2021. He is a certified financial planner, chartered financial consultant, and a certified college financial consultant. You can find out more about Mike at nextmissionfinancialplanning.com. Amy is the founder of Instar Financial Planning, LLC. She is retired from the U.S. Army and has worked in the financial services sector since 2019. She's a certified financial planner, a chartered federal employee benefits counselor, and a chartered retirement planning counselor. You can find out more about Amy at instarfp.com.